If you're getting bored of hearing about all the same old superheroes and villains over and over again, you might not be alone. There are plenty of great characters that no one really talks about anymore, and so that's why I wanted to write this list about the top 10 oldest superheroes who need a comeback. At number 10 is Tigra, first appearing in her own Marvel comic book called The Cat in 1972. This superhero just doesn't get the spotlight very often. Considering she has been a member of the Avengers in the past, it would only make sense that she might appear more prominently in more recent issues, or even MCU movies. But sadly, her most recent appearance was in a supporting role in Avengers Academy between issues 1 and 39. Tigra's powers began as an experiment by Dr. Joanne Tumalo, who gave her powers attached to her costume, and in this form she was simply known as the Cat. But down the line is when she eventually mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid, through a mystical ritual. She was then bound to a race of humanoid cat people from the Middle Ages, which she could then transform into on command from her human form, using the cat's head amulet. She's a pretty cool hero, so I wonder why they haven't really brought her back in any big way. Maybe they found her too similar to DC's Catwoman, who knows. Next up at number 9 is Stingray, an oceanographer turned superhero who builds his suit in order to explore the depths of the ocean. He helps construct an underwater city covered by a glass dome, which he uses to try and grow food for mankind. He first appears in Tales to Astonish number 95 in June of 1967, so he's just on the cusp of the golden age. Just about. This guy is no doubt an older Marvel creation, and if you haven't heard of him, you may not be alone. Although he has appeared as recently as the Iron Man 2020 event, he still only appears briefly as a side character facing off against Captain Barracuda. But at least the writers of that issue probably had the same thought as me, that he deserves to come around again. Once again, my hunch is that he's just a little too similar to DC's Aquaman, which might keep Marvel from giving him any more spotlight than they already have in more modern issues. Although his buddy Namor the Submariner, looks like a carbon copy of Aquaman. But Namor appeared for the first time in Marvel's first ever comic book, Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939, whereas Aquaman didn't appear until 1941. But I digress. It just seems that DC found a way to occupy the underwater superhero market, which keeps us from seeing more characters like Stingray and even Namor more often. At number 8, we have DC's The Question, or just Question. Like Stingray, this superhero first appeared in 1967, but isn't showcased very much anymore. Usually teaming up with the Blue Beetle, this superhero got his last solo series in 1987, lasting 36 issues. He originally had the secret identity of Vic Sage, but was later reimagined in the 2006-2007 miniseries 52, and his protege, Renee Montoya, takes over the mantle. This character is just a good old-fashioned fighter, only really having abilities in martial arts and I guess sleuthing since he's a journalist by trade, but he's just got such a simple and cool film noir kind of look, and it would be cool to see him in a lead role again. Again though, his abilities and look are strikingly similar to Marvel's Chameleon, so maybe by holding back on popularizing this character too much, they're just avoiding butting heads with their competitors. Once again, it's hard to tell. Okay, at number 7, we've got Marvel's Dominic Fortune, or Dominic Fortunov. This character is not only old in terms of his first appearance in the comics, but the character himself is aged to the point where it's known to be one of his biggest weaknesses. First appearing in Marvel Preview number 2 in 1975, this superhero needs a comeback for the sole reason that he's just a guy. He doesn't have any powers, but fought in World War II and always seems to be getting caught up in assassination attempts and weird odd jobs. Like one time when he had to babysit 3 drunken actors in Hollywood for a weekend and had to call the cops on them after things got out of hand. And after that, Fortune actually gets recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury in 1959. He's just a good old-fashioned human superhero who runs into human troubles and stays in his lane, but ends up getting the opportunity still to support the superpowered Avengers with bazooka blasts and covert ops. At number 6, we have DC's Dr. Fate. This guy is old. He first appeared in More Fun Comics number 55 in 1940 and basically hasn't been mentioned again since his death in the Book of Fate number 1 in 1997. So yes, that's a long run. But still, I'd like to see more of him. Dr. Fate is a superhero that's got so much going on and looks so cool that I don't know why he isn't used more often these days. His powers come from an incident when he, Kent Nelson, and his father were uncovering the tomb of ancient immortal Nabu, and Kent is basically basically trained by the ancient being and awarded with the Amulet of Nabu, a cloak, and a helmet. With the training and these items in his control, he has abilities ranging from magic manipulation and flight to invisibility, super strength, and resurrection, among others. It's just a really cool character based on real ancient myth, and I don't see any reason why Dr. Fate shouldn't have another comeback soon. Okay, number 5, Marvel's Gargoyle. This superhero first appeared in Defenders issue number 94 in 1981, but since then he's actually retired and settled down in Greenwich Village. He even opened a restaurant called Isaac's Oysters. But he did go for one more rip for old time's sake, aiding Iron Man on a mission to take down the android Korvac. But that's sort of been it for him. And what's cool about this superhero is that he was sort of meant to be evil, but just chose good. He was formed when Isaac Christians agreed to place his soul inside a cursed gargoyle and do the bidding of the six-fingered hand. This was all in exchange for his issues to be resolved. But then, when he was tasked with capturing Hellcat, a member of the Defenders, he couldn't get himself to do it, and defied the six-finger hand, and just sort of kept living on as this possessed gargoyle who chose good. He kind of reminds me of Beast. He just has this super wholesome energy to him, and I just feel like he could do for more of that sweet, sweet limelight. At number 4, we have Zeta from Batman Beyond, and eventually the Zeta Project cartoon spin-off. The show ran from 2001 to 2002 as part of a spin-off to the Batman Beyond episode Zeta. This character is so wholesome and doesn't get enough attention, having been last seen 20 years ago in what would have been the final episode of the short-running series. This synthoid was built for the NSA to keep an eye on terrorist organizations, so his abilities are pretty extensive, being able to shapeshift into just about anyone to infiltrate and carry out covert ops with ease. He's a naive and friendly character who decides to go rogue after realizing that any one of his assassination targets could be innocent. Zeta had such a moment and clearly a huge approval rating since his one episode got him a whole series, but at a certain point, the world forgot about such a good and powerful synthoid superhero that definitely deserves a comeback. At number 3, there's Warlord, a character the world hasn't seen since his death in Warlord Volume 4, Issue 12. But there should be some kind of revival of Travis Morgan, who is another character on the list who doesn't actually have any powers, but is just a very well-respected and decorated war veteran. He also looks a lot like Oliver Queen or Green Arrow, which could have had something to do with it. They sort of acknowledge this when they finally meet in the same comic, and all of the Seattle underworld mistake Warlord for Green Arrow and attack him on sight. But whatever the reason is, Warlord's legacy deserves to be acknowledged with another appearance of some kind. I mean, the lore behind the character is that in past lives he's been Sir Lancelot, D'Artagnan of the Three Musketeers, and Crazy Horse, among other legendary warriors and soldiers. He's just a great human character with, might I add, a really cool costume and some badass accolades to boot. Bring him back. Okay, at number 2 on the list, we've got Komodo. This superhero really was a flash in the pan, only appearing on and off for a few years and having her legacy end with her powers being stripped for a time until they're restored again by Cloud9 and Hardball. But that's sort of it. And I think the last time she's been seen is in the Fear Itself storyline, which wrapped up in 2011, which is 11 years ago now, believe it or not. But this character needs to reappear in some way. The superhero was first created because Melody Kusama lost her leg in a serious car accident, and none other than Dr. Connors from, yes, the Spider-Man series, decides to endow her with the regenerative powers of a lizard. Well, not only that, of course, she actually turns into a lizard fully and at will and gains super strength, speed, agility, stamina, all that good stuff. I think this story is a good one to retell because who doesn't love a good story where someone confined to a wheelchair is able to not only walk again, but fight crime and be pretty damn good at it. Okay, last on the list is just my personal favorite, arguably obscure superhero 3D Man. An athlete turned superhero, 3D Man mysteriously gained superpowers after being stripped of his 3 Olympic gold medals. I mean, he was taking steroids, but there's always room for redemption, right? This character first appeared in 1998 and no one ever really talks about him. And to be honest, I didn't even know he existed until I started writing this list. And I want this hero to get more spotlight primarily because I'm a sucker for early 2000s culture, and this character is just such a great time capsule for that period, where everybody was obsessed with 3D for some reason, with DVDs coming with 3D glasses in the case, remember that? And 3D Man has the same nostalgic look to him, with many of his appearances being colored in green and red. If you want to look him up yourself, you'll notice that he originally went by the name of Triathlon and later changed to 3D Man during the Secret Invasion storyline. This guy just looks so cool and hits home with some good nostalgia for me, as well as probably anyone from the Gen Z or millennial generations. And there's also just a silly factor there too. 3D Man needs to come back. Please, can we? just for 1 second.
Top 10 nerd, why not click that subscribe so you never miss another timey-wimey old/newest/time traveling list. Do it. Tap it. I dare you. And remember to stick around till the end of this list where I will have some bonus content coming your way. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10. Black Panther. The leader of Wakanda made his first comic book debut appearance in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966. He is often credited with being the first black superhero to appear in comics. The only sad thing is that it took us that long to get one. The 60s! Such a long time in comics, so long. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The first story involving him in the pages of Fantastic Four Volume 1 are pretty hilarious and great. If you haven't read them, you kind of should. They're interesting. Black Panther invites the Fantastic Four to Wakanda. Naive as they are, they accept. But what they don't know is that Black Panther longs to fight them. Of course, while the comic originally seems to be spinning Black Panther as a villain, it is later revealed that he only wanted to test them, and the fighting was merely to prove their merit as he needs their help. In the next issue, issue 53, we learn more about his backstory and why he has sought out the Fantastic Four. We are also introduced even more to the land of Wakanda with its unique combination of new age tech and tradition, old and new. So there you have it. Number 9. Green Lantern. Before Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner, there was Alan Scott. He was the first Green Lantern and was created by Martin Odell, making his comic book debut in All American Comics issue 16. When this first Green Lantern made his appearance, he probably seemed to be pretty cool, I'm sure. This was way back when the Green Lantern was still an actual lantern, by the way. It's just this lantern he was carrying around. But in retrospect, Alan Scott is known as being one of the silliest Green Lanterns because he has one of the strangest weaknesses in comic book history. Wood. While there definitely wouldn't be openly gay superheroes for some time yet since he was introduced in 1940, I like to think the fact that he is helpless against wood might pose a double or symbolic meaning. I'll just let you ponder what you will about that. But that's just me. Either way, the weakness is a hilarious one to see in comics, just villains beating him with wooden clubs and baseball bats, and it would later be fully explained and made semi-logical later on, but still, it's ridiculous. And I love it. Number 8. Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger originally started appearing in a comic strip and would later receive his own comic book series in 1948, which went for over 100 issues. Before he was even in comics though, Lone Ranger was a superhero recognized for his radio show, which debuted in the early 1930s. The first few comics consist of compilations of his comic strips, but new stories began with Lone Ranger starting with issue 38, which saw Paul S. Newman writing and Tom Gill on art. The Lone Ranger was known as a mysterious masked Texan Ranger who would fight bandits and outlaws in the Wild West of America, with his loyal pal Tonto and his trusty steed Silver. Hi-ho Silver away! Number 7. Tonto. You didn't think I was going to talk about Lone Ranger and just leave Tonto out of this list, did you? Tonto was originally shown as Lone Ranger's native partner and was part of the Comanche tribe originally. Some may think of him as just a sidekick, but as time progressed his character tended to be more presented as an equal and partner to the Lone Ranger rather than just a sidekick. He got his own comic book spin-off series in the 50s titled The Lone Ranger's Companion Tonto, and was often depicted as being witty and sarcastic, even going on to mock other less favorable portrayals of himself in pop culture that made him seem more savage. I like when heroic characters are self-aware and sassy like that. I feel it. Deadpool, She-Hulk, Tonto. Keep being sassy, keep being witty. Number 6. Superman. Superman is that hero that you usually think of when someone asks who the oldest superhero is during a trivia night. And honestly, I'm sure it's an acceptable answer by most trivia standards. But not here. Not here. Here we go further. Superman is widely thought of as being one of the oldest, the original American comic book superhero. But seeing as how he is number 6 on this list, I think us mega nerds would likely know otherwise. Still, he came out in 1938 and first debuted in Action Comics number 1. And honestly, if you read his original appearance, it's easy to see what all the hullabaloo is about. It's basically a piece created to show off and introduce just how unstoppable Superman is. In fact, Superman would continue to be presented as near invincible until the 80s, acquiring more and more powers with each appearance. And then we had to fix that. We had to tweak that because it's too much power. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Number 5. Sheena. Queen of the Jungle. You might be wondering just where Wonder Woman is on this list, but Sheena actually predates Wonder Woman, and her own self-titled series even predates Wonder Woman's by a few months. She was originally published by Fiction Comics and was known as Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Most 1930s Queen of the Jungle I have ever seen.
Number 10. Captain America. Starting off with one of the younger members on the list, Captain America. Captain America's age comes from the time that he spent frozen in ice, so he is physically still pretty young, but if you count all the frozen years, he's over 100 years old. And yes, that counts. Kinda like being born on a leap year, but not really. How old are you? Captain America is one of the earliest members of the Avengers, but not one of the founders. No, the group was already founded when he was located frozen in ice, so he was a new recruit, but he became such a presence that he is often associated with the founding, and as a leader of the team. So Cap enjoys a position of high standing, and you can always pull out some "he's old" jokes in case you need or want them, which the MCU did in abundance. Capsicle ahoy! Number 9. Wolverine. Yes, Wolverine has been a member of the Avengers, but at this point, I mean, who hasn't? Between honorary membership and various teams, they've accepted many people. While Wolverine was a full-fledged member, he was one of the new Avengers who joined in 2005, and from there on in would find some form of affiliation, say such as with the Savage Avengers. Wolverine, aka James Howlett, is quite long-lived. He made it onto the list of oldest mutants as well. Wolverine was allegedly born in 1832 or 1886, depending upon which comic you're reading, because Wolverine's history shifts to the point that it's actually a bit of a joke. Some other publications clock him at over 200. The point is, he's old. He's older than Cap. So we have his mutant abilities to thank for this. They allow him to age at a slower pace than most people thanks to his healing factor. His cells regenerate at a much faster rate, keeping them younger and healthier than the natural slow march of time. Number 8. The Sentry. The Sentry is Robert Reynolds, and based on his backstory, he is older than the rest of the Avengers. He is positioned as a Superman-style hero for Marvel, appearing and launching a golden era in a way that happened for DC but not for Marvel, because Marvel wasn't Marvel until the 60s. Before that, they were Timely and Atlas. Hence, this Sentry was there before the rise of the Age of Heroes such as Cap and Namor, who were the Golden Age heroes of Marvel, and he was firmly established by the Renaissance, aka the time of the Fantastic Four, based upon this retroactive canon. The Sentry seemingly doesn't age because of the serum that was the catalyst for him receiving his powers, which also triggered a photosynthetic response that causes him to not only absorb solar energy, but moved his molecules a tenth of a second ahead in time, which causes him to be immensely powerful for reasons. The Sentry, once he was established in canon, earns a place as one of the oldest Avengers. He joined the team in the New Avengers in 2005. Number 7. Namor. Why yes, the Submariner, Imperious Rex, has been on the Avengers. He joined in the 1980s in issue 262. Good old Namor Mackenzie. Once you know that's his name, you can't stop saying it. Namor also made our oldest mutants list, because for a time he was called the First Mutant, a title he has since lost, as he is not really a mutant at all, but instead a hybrid. Namor was born around 1916 as a way to account for him being a Golden Age hero, but still around the Silver Age, and Modern Age. He ages slowly. As mentioned, he was one of the Golden Age heroes for Marvel, and he made that transference over in the Renaissance when he was reintroduced in the Fantastic Four. But of course, the old continuity was still canon as well, so he is over 100 years old. And he's not on like the reputable Avengers team all the time, he gets to be on the Illuminati too, and cause the Skrull invasion. Number 6. Conan the Barbarian. Conan is a recent addition to the Savage Avengers in 2019, and has been there since the first issue. 10,000 BC, that is the era when Conan is supposed to be taking place during a fictional era, but the Avengers is a fictional team, so hey, it counts. Conan was transported forward in time by a spell to be on this team of Avengers, and some would say that doesn't count. But here on Top 10 Nerd, that makes him ancient. This isn't the only time Conan has been brought forward in the Marvel canon either. It usually happens in what-if stories. There's a story where he becomes a pimp, kinda. So you can have those fun culture shock moments. I mean, if him being a pimp is fun. Venom is also on this team of Avengers too. He's old. Well, the symbiote is. Number 5. Star Fox. Star Fox is a member of the Eternals, a race who is an offshoot of the evolutionary process that would create life on Earth. The Eternals are an extremely long-lived race who are viewed essentially as immortal. Star Fox is the brother of Thanos, and he was recruited to the Avengers in the 1980s. His first appearance as a member was in issue 243, but he was a member in training since issue 232. Eros, aka Star Fox, would be on the team without much fanfare until he was accused of sexual assault. Now, we've talked about this many times in this channel, and some of you are like, why do you keep bringing it up? Well, it's cause unless you were really tracking Star Fox, like you're a big Star Fox fan, that is the most significant thing to happen to him in many people's minds. And for some, that arc he's never really recovered from. from it. Number 4, Gilgamesh, the Forgotten One. Let's continue on down this path of Eternals. He got to be on the Avengers at a time when the roster was nearly empty. He joined in Avengers issue number 300 in 1989. It was at this point that he properly took on the name Gilgamesh and updated his costume. He then also took the mantle of Monster Hunter. He would assist them firstly until it appeared to his death in 391, and then he would officially leave when his essence was bound to Olympus. Some people afraid he was on the team, which works because of his name, the Forgotten One. Number 3, Cersei. Cersei joined the Avengers in issue 314 in 1990. Captain America had already met Cersei a couple of times, once through time travel and then because she would become friends with some of the Avengers, as Cersei grew quite attached to her time as a human during the time when the Eternals had lost their memory. He would ask her for her help and she would eagerly agree because she had a crush on Cap and was often seen flirting with him. It was after she had helped out the Avengers that she would be asked to join. This was again during their quest for members, as she was an ideal choice as she had already worked with them. She would prove to be a great asset to the team, but Cap would consistently find himself embarrassed by her flirting with him. However, over time she would become more and more aggressive. Cersei, like Gilgamesh and Star Fox, is an Eternal. So, long lived. It's part of the pedigree. She is said to have been born during the Ice Age. Number 2, Thor, the god of thunder, currently the herald of thunder at the time of this recording. He is of course one of the Asgardian gods. Thor has lived for millennia, long enough to become ensconced in myth. He is at least as old as man, probably older. The Asgardians live in another realm and age much slower than humans, not only as a result of their physiology, but as a result of the golden apples of Idun they eat to prolong their lives. He would end up joining the Avengers after he was cast to Earth by his father Odin. For a time he had a human form as well, that of Donald Blake. Despite this, he is one of the founding members of the Avengers, as one of the key players in Marvel's Renaissance, at the start of the Silver Age. Number 1, Valkyrie. Valkyrie joined the team during what's called the Heroic Age of Recruits, and first appeared as an Avenger in Secret Avengers Volume 1 in 2010. It was revealed to be the original Brunhild, which it matters. Valkyrie is of course based off of the Valkyries of Norse mythology, and firmly planted within Thor's universe. Brunhild is seemingly older than Thor, as she was selected for Valhalla by Odin before the Thunder God makes his appearance. This makes her one of the oldest Avengers. She also has a pretty confusing history involving multiple identities, some time being taken over by the Enchantress, being split into multiple people, and the like.
Number 10, Lasher. Lasher was created when a company called the Life Foundation forcibly extracted 5 offspring from Venom. You see, during the Cold War, the Life Foundation believed that a nuclear holocaust was coming and wanted to create a superpowered police force to protect this new world or, utopia that they were creating. That's when they decided that a symbiote police force would probably be the best option. One of those 5 symbiotes was Lasher. Lasher merged with Ramon Hernandez and is known for his green color and the tentacles on his back, which, was his primary attack, and for the most part, it was very effective. Number 9, Phage. Also one of the ones created because of the Life Foundation, Phage bonded with Karl Mack. Phage is known for his orange and black appearance and being able to mold his body into sharp blades, similar, to Carnage, which was effective against his opponents. He's also one of the largest symbiotes. He has a build that is very similar to Venom, which along with those blades would make, a really deadly combo. Number 8, Agony. Agony, also a Life Foundation creation, bonded with Leslie Jasnira. Agony was unique in that she was able to spit acid that could burn through almost anything. Agony also had the power to absorb and regurgitate chemicals. Oh god. That's so gross. She also had a very different look than her siblings. She was bright purple with hints of black and had wavy hair. Of course, she also had sharp teeth and massive claws. Number 7. Riot. Riot is, well you guessed it, another symbiote created because of the Life Foundation. Riot bonded with Trevor Cole, who was a mercenary. Riot took on a very similar appearance to Venom. His build, size, and color scheme were all very similar. He's also considered to be the most violent of the Life Foundation creations. Riot is also the only one of his siblings to make a live action appearance, so far. He was the main antagonist in the 2018 film Venom. Now, in the film, he didn't actually merge with Trevor Cole, instead he went with the head of the Life Foundation, Carlton Drake. Who knows? Maybe we'll see some of Riot's siblings in future films. Number 6, Scream. Can I get created because of Life Foundation for 500? Oh, thank you. Scream ended up bonding with human Donna Diego. Scream's color scheme is also very unique, at least for symbiotes. Scream is yellow and black. Also, it is believed that Scream is the strongest of the symbiotes that were extracted from Venom. The reason being is that even though, she was eventually defeated, she took out and killed the host of the other 4 symbiotes that were created by the Life Foundation. Scream also used her long, flowing hair as a weapon, whipping it and slicing her foes. Number 5, Hybrid. Have you ever wondered what would happen if 4 symbiotes merged together? Well, that is exactly what Hybrid is. Hybrid is Riot, Phage, Lasher, and Agony merged into one. All 4 of their hosts were killed by their sibling Scream. Hybrid merged with Scott Washington, who was a guardsman at the prison The Vault, where all 4 of them were actually being held. Now, Scott ended up realizing these 4 symbiotes weren't actually all that evil, and that the experiments that were being done on them were actually causing them a great deal of pain. So, he decided to free them, and he got fired for it. They eventually bonded with him, and because of that, Scott actually regained the ability to walk. You see, years earlier there was a shooting that killed his brother and left him paralyzed. He wanted to go after the people that caused this and kill them, but get this, the symbiotes actually told him not to do it. They didn't actually want to kill anyone. So they ended up finding the people responsible and handing them over to the authorities. You see, not all symbiotes are bad. Also, since there were 4 different symbiotes merged into one, Scott had to deal with 4 different personalities. Man, that would be an experience. Hearing all those voices in your head, probably make you go a bit crazy. Number 4, All Black the Necrosword. Alright, so this one isn't technically an old symbiote, but it is the oldest symbiote. You get it? You know what I mean? Okay, what I mean by that is, even though it was introduced in Thor God of Thunder #2 in 2013, it was revealed that it is technically the oldest symbiote ever created. It was primarily used by Gore the God Butcher. It was so powerful that it could kill gods and celestial beings, and every time it did kill them, it took their blood and got even stronger. It instantly became a fan favorite, and because of it, we got one of the most popular Thor stories ever written. And, fun fact, it has also been used by Galactus to destroy worlds. I mean, the thing is insanely powerful. Number 3, Toxin. Toxin is one of the newer ones on this list, but of course that doesn't mean he's actually really new. Toxin debuted all the way back in 2004. Now, since all symbiotes create their offspring alone, they don't actually need to mate with one another. This eventually ends up happening to Carnage. Now, Carnage was naturally worried because each offspring is said to be stronger than their predecessor. Because of that, Carnage was ready to kill it as soon as it was born. Good old Carnage. When Toxin was born, Carnage just couldn't kill it. He did try, but Toxin was just already too powerful, and it ended up bonding with Patrick Mulligan, an NYPD officer. Toxin is also red and has a slim spider-like appearance when he was bonded with Patrick, but later on he ended up bonding with Eddie Brock and grew to be a lot bigger and way scarier. He also has an amazing healing factor and is more resistant to sound and heat than most other symbiotes. Number 2, Carnage. Carnage is the first child of Venom. Carnage is all red and is one of the most powerful and terrifying symbiotes around. Seriously, this guy is what nightmares are made of. And to make matters worse, he bonded with a serial killer, Cletus Cassidy, who we will finally see in live action for the very first time this year in Sony's Venom 2. I mean, fingers crossed it turns out well. I'm really hoping. Okay, but back to the comics. Carnage was created when Venom left behind his offspring in the prison where Eddie Brock was being held. This new symbiote offspring made its way to Eddie's cellmate, Cletus. Cletus then broke out of prison and began murdering a ton of people. No surprise there. Carnage also went on to become one of Spider-Man's greatest foes. Number 1, Venom. The original symbiote. While he may not be the strongest or technically the oldest, Venom is still considered to be the best by a lot of fans. There's a reason people have grown to love symbiotes so much, and it all has to do with this guy. He was first introduced when he bonded with Peter Parker, giving him, the famous black suit. Although, fans weren't instantly happy with Spider-Man's new look. It did become a lot more famous and well liked as time went on. They eventually did make him change back to his, good old red and blue spandex. And the alien symbiote found its way to another host, Eddie Brock. Fans just couldn't get enough of Venom, and to this day, he is regarded as one of the greatest Spider-Man villains of all time. I mean, the guy had his own film in 2018 and it grossed over $856 million at the worldwide box office. And that was with a mixed response. Not a lot of villains could do that.
Number 10, Chameleon. Chameleon made his first appearance in the very first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Although there are a lot of other famous supervillains that people think of when it comes to Peter Parker's gallery of famous and capable rogues, Chameleon Chameleon was the first that Spider-Man would come up against. In this very first issue, Spider-Man attempted to join the Fantastic Four, who basically fight him due to the fact that they think he's some kind of villain for breaking into the Baxter building. Of course, Spider-Man was only attempting to do so to impress them so they would invite him to join their team. When they refused to accept him into the team, Spider-Man set on his own to fight crime, and Chameleon disguised himself as Spider-Man to protect his own identity while committing crimes himself, ruining Spidey's reputation and ensuing Peter to go up against Chameleon to put a stop to him. Number 9. Dr. Von Doom and his Doombots. Sounds like a cool band. Dr. Von Doom and his Doombots. We were first introduced to Dr. Doom as a supervillain in issue 5 of the first volume of the Fantastic Four. In his introductory issue, the famous and brilliant villain used his brains and gadgets to capture the Fantastic Four. He wanted them to help him capture Blackbeard's treasure by using a time travel machine that he had constructed to send them into the past. In the end, they tricked him with a chest full of chains, and the thing smashed Dr. Doom to bits, only to find out that the Doom that they were dealing with was actually a robotic copy. The actual Doom also ended up getting defeated as well, and the Fantastic Four got away. But this certainly wouldn't be the last that they would see of Doom, who would become their most iconic foe. Number 8. Miracle Man. What's up with all these original Fantastic Four rogues who kidnapped Invisible Woman, by the way, or Invisible Girl as she was known then? Apparently kidnapping Sue was a classic villain move back in the day. Miracle Man was originally a stage magician who claimed that he was even more powerful than the Fantastic Four, who just so happened to be in his audience when he was performing. After that he proved this in his stage show, he decided that he should probably become a criminal. He was so talented and smart and obviously, I guess, selfish and villainous somewhat, if he decided to go that route as opposed to the heroic one, that he made the Fantastic Four think that a promotional statue for a film called The Monster of Mars had come to life. While the Fantastic Four were distracted dealing with that whole scenario, he pulled off a series of robberies. But don't worry, he was defeated. After, of course, he kidnapped the Invisible Girl. Like I said, that's a thing that people like to do back in the day. Number 7. Skrulls. That's right, Skrulls are some of the oldest villains around. Did you know that? I know, it's pretty surprising. Although they aren't exactly considered clean-cut villains anymore. They have even teamed up with Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, before to help save the universe. Originally, however, the Skrulls appeared in Fantastic Four Volume 1 Issue 2 and were hell-bent on invading Earth. This was right after the FF team had been introduced, which was basically all that issue 1 was about, an origin story. The Skrulls knew that the FF were the main protectors of Earth, despite the fact that they'd sort of just started their superhero career, which is kinda weird. Anyways, they decided to impersonate the FF, commit a bunch of villainous deeds while impersonating them in order to frame them and have Earth's military capture and kill the Fantastic Four team, so that the Skrulls might then invade Earth with no one powerful enough to put a stop to them. Of course, this plan was foiled when the FF trapped the imposters, unmasked them as Skrulls, and ended up posing as those Skrulls to tell the Skrull leader that Earth's defenses were too powerful for the invasion to succeed, thus scaring them off. Basically, they defeated an entire Skrull invasion in that comic, so that's pretty impressive. The Skrulls that originally posed as the Fantastic Four members were forced to stay behind after the invasion left, because obviously the Fantastic Four was not going to let them go back up onto that ship. So they then decided to take the form of cows and continue to live on Earth in apparent peace. Peaceful cows. Apparently they'd rather be anything but Skrulls, so they said in the comic, which I thought, oh, that's kind of like rude. I'm sure there are Skrulls that really like being Skrulls. Ugh. Number 6. Dr. Sivana. If you've seen the film Shazam, you likely are familiar with Dr. Sivana, or if you're aware of the Captain Marvel / Shazam comics. He was one of the first villains that Shazam actually came up against and made his comic book debut in Whiz Comics issue number 2. His first master plot of villainy? To ransom radio waves. The 1940s, what a time. He asked for $50 million and if he wasn't paid, threatened to create radio silence everywhere. Because this was the 40s, of course, that was a really big deal. Although right now we'd probably be like, who listens to the radio? But also $50 million is an insane amount of money to ask for. I feel like if Dr. Sivana hadn't been so greedy, it might have worked out better for him. This $50 million in the 1940s? Jeez! In the end, Billy Batson and his Captain Marvel form defeated Sivana by smashing his radio silencer tech, which was like this huge machine by the way, to smithereens. But as promised, the Doctor would return to battle Captain Marvel, or as he's known now, Shazam, again, becoming one of his mainstay villains. Number 5. Joe Chill. While we didn't know who he was at the time, Joe Chill would go on to become a huge supervillain in Batman's life. He would be known to Bruce Wayne as the man responsible for the death of Batman's parents. Well, responsible. More, he was known as the perpetrator. The circumstances surrounding the murder of Martha and Thomas Wayne in regards to it being part of a great plot or just a random mugging gone wrong would continue to be explored even after we found out Joe Chill's name. Either way, Joe Chill has been a huge villain in Batman's life anyways, because he took away Bruce Wayne's parents, which is kinda Batman's whole thing. Number 4. The Monk. The Monk first appeared in Detective Comics issue number 31, shortly after Batman's first appearance a few issues previously. He is often dressed in red robes, but his first appearance also featured him wearing a red cloth bag with eye holes on his head, marked with a skull and crossbones. So stylish. This was way back when Bruce Wayne also had a fiancée named Julie. The Monk ends up hypnotizing and kidnapping Julie. Batman, however, ends up chasing him down and facing a castle filled with booby traps in order to save his fiancée, who does not know apparently that her betrothed Bruce is actually the Bat. The issue ends with Batman swearing vengeance, soaring off to Hungary to find the Monk and his werewolves? I just love that part because I'm always like, wait, what do you mean you're going after his werewolves? He has werewolves? What? Did we find that out in that issue? I don't remember that being mentioned, but maybe I forgot. Number 3. Dr. Death. While his New 52 appearance is terrifying, Dr. Death actually first appeared in Detective Comics Volume 1, issue number 29, and looked just like your average mad scientist guy. He was one of the first supervillains that Batman ever encountered and is often known as a producer of biological weapons. You know, evil mad science stuff. Like most of Batman's supervillains, he isn't superpowered himself. His first appearance saw him being apprehended by Batman only to go down in a blaze of flames, though at least Batman tried to stop him from going down in a blaze of glory by tossing a fire extinguisher at him. So helpful, Batman, thanks for that. Needless to say, this wouldn't be the end of Dr. Death and we would definitely see him again. Now he's got that crazy bone serum that just makes bones grow everywhere. Used it himself, so he's got these crazy teeth. You should show them the picture. Number 2. Ultra Humanite. One of Superman's first foes before Lex Luthor even. I know, it's crazy. If you haven't noticed yet, comics both seemed to act as a celebration for science while also having an obsession for its less honorable uses via mad science, as we like to call it. That's its own category of science for you science nerds out there. Just kidding. I know mad science isn't an actual category, but it should be. Apparently old school views were that science is awesome but can also be super dangerous, which, I mean, true. Ultra Humanite's brand of mad science came in the form of body swapping. A brilliant mind trapped in a frail, old, crippled body, Geralt dreamed of setting himself free of his decrepit and failing body and conquering the world. Just normal dreams, you know how it is. Becoming Ultra Humanite, he is known for inhabiting various female bodies in the DC universe, including Tara's for a time. Kinda weird. And for inhabiting the body of an albino ape. Those are his things. He's into apes and swapping bodies with ladies. It's normal. It's fine. Number 1. Namor. The Submariner appeared even before Marvel was called Marvel. Well, now he is definitely more anti-hero and he never really has been a bad guy when it comes to him as a character. He's definitely also a bit of a jerk with a dark side, even when he's acting heroically, which, not going to lie, is part of the reason that I think we all love him so much. He's just so complex. He can be anything he wants or anything he needs to be. A villain, a hero, an anti-hero. However, when he was first introduced in the Fantastic Four comics in issue number 4 of volume 1 in the early 60s, way after his initial introduction in April of 1939, I know, it was as a villain to the Fantastic Four. After remembering his life as Prince of the Sea, Namor returns to his lost home of Atlantis only to find that it had been destroyed by the radioactive pollution of atomic tests. He seeks vengeance and the Fantastic Four must stop him as he aims to attack the land, destroying the city and causing harm to the land dwellers who he deems responsible for the destruction of his home. Which was very villainous at the time, But I feel like now a lot of us are cool with this because we're like, hey, you know, the ocean's real polluted, so like, yeah, fair enough. Also, they really did that. They really used to set off atomic bomb tests underwater. That's a thing that we did. Shame on us. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you enjoyed this list. Who are some of your favorite classic villains? Are there any one-shot villains who you think deserve to be resurrected and return? Or any mainstay classics that you think instead should have been forgotten long ago and discarded? Let us know your thoughts and feels in the comments below. And remember to smash that sub and give our bell a ring-a-ling on the way down there if you haven't already. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you, as always, to stay nerdy, YouTube.